You swore you'd never be like them. You vowed you'd never yell at your kids the way your father yelled at you. You pledged you'd never use the silent treatment as punishment, the way your mother did. You swore you'd never say those phrases that shattered you. And then one day you caught yourself doing exactly that. The words tumbled out of your mouth before you could stop them. The tone was the same, the expression on your child's face, and was the very expression you wore as a kid, and you felt horror, shame, despair. How did this happen? You were so sure, you had promised, you had sworn. Carl Jung explained exactly why this happens, and more importantly, he showed how to stop it. Because awareness isn't enough. Knowing your parents were wrong doesn't prevent you from repeating their mistakes. Promising to be different doesn't change the patterns installed in your unconscious. Let me tell you about a man named Michael. Michael was 41 years old when he came to see me. He had an 8-year-old son, and he was terrified. Because Michael was. Watching himself morph into his own father, Michael's father was a volatile man, impatient, critical. When Michael did something wrong, his father would explode, yell, humiliate, make Michael feel small and incompetent. Michael grew up afraid of his father, grew up tiptoeing around, trying not to trigger explosions, grew up feeling incapable, stupid, a failure. And Michael swore he would be different with his own children, swore he would be patient, calm, loving, present. For years, he succeeded. His son was born. And Michael was the father he always wanted to be, patient, playful, present. But when his son turned 7, something started to shift. His son began to challenge him, to disobey, to test boundaries, the way 7-year-olds do. And Michael started to feel an anger he didn't recognize, an impatience that seemed to come from somewhere else, a desire to shout that surged before he could control it. And one day, it happened. His son spilled a glass of juice on the rug, an accident, something kids do, and Michael exploded. He yelled, he humiliated. He said things he didn't even remember afterward. He saw the fear contort his son's face. He saw in his son's eyes the same expression he had at 7 years old. When the rage passed, Michael felt nauseous, literally nauseous. How did I do this? I swore I'd never be like that. I swore. Jung would have explained to Michael what was happening. The conscious vow and promise have no power over the unconscious. You can swear 1,000 times that you'll be different, but the pattern installed in childhood continues to operate in the background, and when the right conditions appear, the pattern activates. Michael didn't explode when his son was a baby. Babies don't challenge, don't test boundaries in the same way, don't trigger those deep-seated responses. But when his son reached the age when Michael suffered the most, the triggers began to fire. The behavior of his 7-year-old son was activating body memories from Michael at 7 years old, and the pattern of his father manifested through Michael. Not because Michael was evil, not because he wanted to hurt his son, but because the pattern was there installed, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Jung called this possession by a complex. When a complex is activated, you're no longer yourself, but you're taken over by a pattern that's bigger than your conscious will. You act automatically, as if someone else is in control. And here's what makes it even more terrifying. The complex isn't just a memory, it's not just a recollection of what your parents did. It's a complete psychic structure, with its own emotions, with its own logic, with its own will. Jung discovered that complexes function like autonomous personalities within us. They have a life of their own. And when activated, they take control. That's why Michael felt like he was watching from the outside, because at that moment, he wasn't in control. The paternal complex was, the internalized pattern of his father was, and that pattern doesn't respond to logical arguments, doesn't respond to promises, doesn't respond to conscious decisions. It responds only to integration, to healing, to transformation that happens at levels deeper than rational thought. Michael described it this way. It was like I was watching from the outside. I saw my mouth moving. I heard the words coming out, but I couldn't stop it. It was like my father was speaking through me. That's terrifying and real, and much more common than people admit. Stay with me, because now I'm going to show you why awareness alone doesn't work, and what really does. Most people think that simply knowing is enough. Simply understanding is enough. Simply deciding to be different is enough. But Jung was clear. Awareness without integration changes nothing. You can know intellectually that your father was abusive. You can understand theoretically that yelling at children is damaging. You can decide rationally that you'll be different. But the pattern isn't in your rational mind, it's in your body, in your automatic reactions, in the neural connections formed in childhood. When you're triggered, the rational mind shuts down, the limbic system takes over, and the limbic system doesn't know promises. It only knows patterns. Michael could recite all the books on conscious parenting. He knew the theory. He understood the damage that yelling causes. But when the trigger was activated, none of that mattered. The body took over. The pattern manifested. So, what works? Jung identified a 4-step process for breaking generational patterns. It's not fast and it's not easy, but it's the only path that truly works. Step 1. Recognition of the pattern. You need to see clearly what you're repeating, not in theory, in practice. This means paying attention to the moments when you're triggered, to the moments when you lose control, to the moments when you become your father or your mother. Michael started keeping a journal. Every time he exploded, he wrote about it afterward. What happened before, what he felt in his body, and what he said, how his son reacted. After a few weeks, patterns started to emerge. He exploded more when he was tired. He exploded more when his son challenged him in front of other people. He exploded more when he felt incompetent as a father. These were the triggers, the situations that activated the complex. And the most interesting thing, Michael realized that the triggers weren't obvious. It wasn't just any challenge that activated him. It was the challenge that specifically resembled the type of challenge he gave his father. When his son said, "I don't want to," and crossed his arms, Michael was activated instantly, because he remembered doing exactly that at 7 years old, and remembered the consequence. The body recognized the pattern before the mind, and the body reacted before awareness. This is a crucial principle that Carl Jung identified. These triggers are specific. They're connected to specific memories, to specific moments. Identifying the triggers with precision is the first step to deactivating them. Second step, connection to the origin. Once you identify the triggers, you need to connect them with childhood. Why does being challenged activate you? Why does exhaustion remove your defenses? Why is feeling incompetent so unbearable? Michael discovered that his volatile father exploded in exactly the same situations. When challenged, his father felt disrespected. When tired, his father lost what little patience he had. When he felt incompetent, his father attacked to avoid the pain. Michael was replicating not only his father's behaviors, but his father's triggers, the same wounds, the same defenses. And more importantly, Michael discovered that when he exploded at his son, he was feeling what he felt at 7 years old. The anger that emerged wasn't anger at his son. It was the accumulated anger of childhood that had never been processed. Carl Jung had a term for this: frozen affect, emotions that got trapped in time, that were never expressed, that were never validated, that were never allowed. When you were a child, you couldn't feel anger towards your father. It was too dangerous. You couldn't express your pain. No one wanted to listen. You couldn't cry. It was weakness. So these emotions got frozen, stored away, waiting. And now, decades later, they emerge, not as emotions of the past, but as emotions of the present, directed at people in the present, especially your children. Because your children activate the same situations, the same triggers, the same wounds. And the frozen affect finally finds a way out, through you, to them. Third step, feeling the original pain. This is the most difficult step, and also the most important. You need to feel what was never allowed to be felt in childhood. Michael had never cried about his father. never felt the full anger, never allowed the pain to fully emerge. He had intellectualized it. He understood that his father was abusive. He knew it had been unfair. He could psychologically explain what had happened. But feeling it was different. Feeling it was terrifying. Because feeling meant going back to being that 7-year-old child. It meant feeling the powerlessness, the humiliation, the fear, the anger with no way out. Carl Jung was clear. What isn't felt consciously is acted out unconsciously. Michael acted out his father's anger because he had never felt his own anger about his father. He replicated the behavior because the original emotion had never been processed. The body stores what the mind refuses, and the body expresses what the mind represses. One day, Michael was alone at home. His son was at school. His wife was at work. And he started to remember. He remembered a specific time when his father had exploded. Michael was 9 years old. He had gotten a bad grade in math. His father saw the test and started yelling, "You're stupid. You're useless. You'll never be anything in life. I'm ashamed to have a son like you." Michael remembered as if he were there. He remembered the smell of the house, the sound of his father's voice, the feeling in his stomach. And for the first time, he allowed himself to feel. The anger came first. An enormous anger. Anger at his father for being so cruel. Anger at his mother for not protecting him. Anger at himself for having believed his father's words. Then came the sadness, a deep sadness for the boy he was, for the childhood he lost, for the love he never received. Michael cried like he had never cried before. He cried for hours. He cried until he had no more tears. And when he finished, something had changed. The weight he had carried for decades was lighter. It hadn't disappeared completely, but it was lighter. Carl Jung called this emotional integration. When the repressed emotion is finally felt and processed, it loses power over you. And here is something that few people understand. Integration isn't a one-time event. It's not just one time you cry and that's it. It's a process. Layers and layers of pain that need to be accessed and processed. Michael needed to return to this pain many times. Different memories and different moments and different emotions. Each time he processed a layer, he gained more freedom, more space between the trigger and the reaction, more ability to choose. Some people try to skip this step. They think they can go straight to creating new responses without processing the old pain. It doesn't work. The body keeps the score, and the body will collect. If you don't process the pain consciously, it will continue to leak unconsciously, through explosions, through coldness, through patterns you swore you'd never repeat. Michael didn't stop being triggered after that day. He still felt anger when his son challenged him. He still felt impatience when he was tired. But now he could pause. He could recognize. This is the wounded child reacting. This isn't about my son. This is about my pain. And that pause made all the difference. Fourth step, creating new responses. Once you recognize the pattern, connect with the origin, and process the pain, you can start to create new responses. It's not enough to stop doing what your parents did. You need to actively create what they should have done. Michael started to practice. When he felt the anger rising, he said to his son, "I'm feeling frustrated right now. I need a few minutes to calm down, then we'll talk." It was simple, but it was revolutionary, because Michael was doing what his father never did, recognizing his emotions without unloading them on his son, modeling emotional regulation, showing that adults also feel anger, but can choose how to respond. In the beginning, it was difficult. Every time he stopped to breathe instead of yelling, he felt like he was fighting against a powerful internal force, because he was. He was fighting against decades of programming, against patterns installed in the body, against the inertia of the unconscious. But each time he chose differently. The new path became stronger. Michael developed what he called his pause arsenal, simple techniques he used when he felt the activation starting. First technique, breathing. When he felt the anger rising, he stopped and took 3 deep breaths. It seems simple, and it is simple, but it works because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system and slows down the fight-or-flight response. Second technique, naming. He said to himself in silence, "This is the complex activating. This isn't real. This is the past trying to control the present." Naming what's happening creates distance and creates perspective. Third technique, physically leaving. When the activation was too strong, Michael would leave the room. He'd go to another room. He'd go to the backyard. He'd take a walk around the block. Physical distance helps create emotional distance. Fourth technique, remembering his son. Michael kept a picture of his son on his phone, a picture where his son was happy, laughing. When he felt the anger rising, he'd look at the picture and remember, "This is my son. He is not my father. He doesn't deserve what my father did." These techniques weren't magic. They didn't work every time, but they worked more and more as Michael practiced. Neuroscientists have confirmed what Carl Jung intuited. The brain is plastic. New connections can be formed. Old patterns can be weakened. But this requires conscious repetition. Each time you choose the new response instead of the old reaction, you strengthen the new neural pathway. Michael practiced for months. Some days were easy. Others were impossibly difficult. There were relapses done. There were moments when he yelled again. Moments when the complex took over before he could stop himself. But each relapse became a learning opportunity. What happened beforehand? What triggered it? What he could do differently next time? And gradually, the pattern began to change. Michael's son is 12 years old today. He still tests boundaries, still challenges. It's normal. But Michael doesn't explode anymore. Or when he does explode, it's rare. And when it happens, he apologizes, takes responsibility, explains to his son that Daddy made a mistake. And that too is revolutionary, because Michael's father never apologized, never admitted wrong, never took responsibility. Michael is breaking the cycle not by being perfect, but by being different, by doing what his father never did, recognizing faults, apologizing, trying to improve. Now I need to talk about something that many people don't want to hear. Breaking generational patterns is the most important work you can do, and also the hardest. There's no magic formula. There's no quick process, and there's no shortcut. It's a lifetime of work. It's facing pains you've spent decades avoiding. It's feeling things that seem unbearable. It's making conscious choices when every cell in your body wants to react automatically, and no one can do it for you. Therapists can guide, books can inform, videos can inspire, but the work is yours, the pain is yours, the transformation is yours, and it's worth it. Because when you break a pattern, you're not just healing yourself, you're healing generations. Your son won't carry what you carried. Your grandchildren won't repeat what you repeated. The chain of pain that comes from previous generations ends here. You can be the turning point. The ancestor who decided to do things differently. The link that broke the chain. Carl Jung believed that this was the most sacred work a human being could do, transform themselves to transform the future, and he was right. Modern researchers have studied families for generations and have discovered that unprocessed trauma passes from parent to child, not just through behaviors, but through genetic expression, through neurological patterns, through family structures. When you process your trauma, you literally change what passes on to your children, not just emotionally, biologically. And you are changing the course of your family history. You are healing wounds that came before you. You are protecting people who haven't been born yet. That's power. That's responsibility. That's the most important work there is. If you're watching this and recognizing your own patterns, that's the first step. Awareness is the beginning. If you're feeling pain hearing these words, that's good. Pain is the sign that something needs to be healed. If you're thinking about your own son, your own daughter, the patterns you've already repeated, know this: it's never too late to change. It's never too late to apologize. It's never too late to start again. You don't have to be the perfect father or mother. You just have to be different, conscious, willing to do the work. And if you're wondering if you can, let me tell you something. The fact that you're here, watching this video, thinking about these questions, already shows that you're different from your parents, because narcissists don't question, don't reflect, don't seek to improve. The simple fact that you're worried about repeating patterns shows that you have an awareness that your parents never had. Use that awareness. Do the work. Break the cycle. For yourself, for your children, for the generations to come. Let me tell you about Michael's daughter. Michael didn't just have a son, he also had a 14-year-old daughter. And the relationship with her was different. Because girls trigger different things, girls didn't challenge Michael's father in the same way. So Michael never exploded with his daughter. But that didn't mean his daughter wasn't affected. He observed, saw her father yelling at her brother, saw the fear in her brother's eyes, saw the tension in the house. And she developed her own pattern. She became the peacemaker, the one who calmed things down, the one who did everything to avoid conflict, because she had learned. Anger is dangerous. Conflict is threatening. Better to erase herself to maintain peace. Carl Jung called this defensive adaptation. Children develop strategies to survive the family environment. These strategies work in childhood, but become prisons in adulthood. Michael's daughter was afraid to express her opinion, afraid to disagree, afraid of any confrontation. And when Michael began his healing work, she resisted. Because her father's change threatened the balance she knew. If her father could express healthy emotions, that meant she could too. And that was terrifying. Breaking generational patterns doesn't just affect the relationship with the person who triggered you, it affects the entire family system. When you change, everyone needs to readjust. And not everyone is ready. Michael needed to have difficult conversations with his daughter, needed to explain what he was learning, needed to apologize for the environment he had created, even without yelling directly at her. And he needed to give her time to process. Family healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It's uncomfortable. It's necessary. But the result is worth every difficult moment. Today, Michael's family is different. Not perfect. Families are never perfect, but different, more honest, more safe. The son can express anger without fear of retaliation. The daughter is learning to have an opinion. The wife says she has a different husband. And Michael knows that the cycle is breaking, that his grandchildren won't grow up with the fear that he grew up with. May the inheritance of pain from your father not be passed on. This is generational transformation. This is the most important legacy that any human being can leave. And you know what else changed? Michael's wife, Sarah. She said something he'll never forget. She said, "I married you because you were different from my father. But in the last few years, you were becoming just like him. And I was getting scared. Scared of you. Scared for our son. Scared I'd made a mistake marrying you. And now," she said, "I have the husband I always wanted, the father our children deserve. You're back to being you." Michael wept when he heard that, because he realized he wasn't just destroying himself, he was destroying his marriage, he was destroying his wife's trust. He was recreating the same environment of fear in which he grew up, breaking the cycle, saved more than his relationship with his children. It saved his marriage. It saved his family. It saved himself. Now I'm going to give you a practical exercise, something you can do today. Grab a pen and paper, or open a document on your phone, and answer these questions. First question: what is the pattern from your parents that you most fear repeating? Be specific, not just anger or coldness, the exact behavior, the exact situation. Second question: When have you already repeated this pattern? Think of specific moments. With whom? In what circumstances? What happened before? Third question. What were you feeling in those moments? Not what you were thinking. What were you feeling in your body? Where did the emotion manifest? Fourth question. When did you feel this for the first time in childhood? Try to remember a specific moment, a scene, a day. Fifth question. What did that child need and not receive? What should your father or your mother have done? What would have been different? These questions are the beginning of the mapping. They are the first step of recognition. Don't rush, doubt it, don't force it. Let the answers emerge. And if difficult emotions appear, that's good. It means you're touching something real, something that needs to be healed. You can do this exercise once, or you can do it every week. Michael did it every week for months, and each time he did, he discovered new layers, triggers he hadn't noticed, connections he hadn't seen. Self-awareness is a continuous process, not a destination, and each layer you discover and process is more freedom you gain. Carl Jung spent his entire life doing this work on himself. He wrote about his own complexes, his own patterns, his own inner demons. He knew that the therapist can only take the patient as far as he himself has gone. So go beyond, go deeper, go where it hurts, because that's where the healing happens. If this content is helping you understand patterns that you've carried for decades, consider leaving a super thanks. You help bring more content like this, and I read every message personally before I finish. Uyki, I need to tell you one last thing. You didn't choose your childhood. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the patterns that were installed in you. But you can choose now. You can choose to continue repeating. Or you can choose to do the work. It's not easy. It's never easy. But it's possible. And it's the most important thing you can do for your life, for your relationships, for your children, present or future. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You are not your father. You are not your mother. You are not the patterns they installed in you. You are the awareness that can observe these patterns, the strength that can transform them, and the human being who can choose differently. Use that power. Do the work. Break the cycle. For you, for your healing, for your future. Tell me in the comments, what pattern from your parents have you caught yourself repeating? And what are you doing to change? I read every answer and respond as much as I can.